As you can hear from my voice, I am recovering from, I'm actually not even sure. It came on pretty quickly. I think I caught something, and so I'm joining just via audio today because I'm actually joining from bed. But I absolutely did not want to miss this session. So thank you all for joining the winter sessions. These are bonus sessions as a part of the 30-day meditation challenge. And I like to start my sessions in song. So today we're going to be talking about self-forgiveness and what that looks like, why it's important, and how we can achieve it. You may start to think about those things that you haven't quite forgiven yourself for just yet, whether it's regrets in our relationships or paths not chosen, things that you're holding against yourself and that's influencing your present. What might that be for you? So, this is going to be a part of a series, a little mini series within our winter sessions called Loving Yourself Free. Loving Yourself Free. We are only, well, before I begin, so I'm Unique, I'm Unique Val, and you're listening to this, I might gift this to our community. So if you're listening to this outside of the 30-day meditation challenge, these are conversations, practices that incorporate the deeper self teachings, your access to the deeper self. And so you'll hear me talk about the deeper self. And this is your soul's essence. This is the eternal, ever present aspect of you. And this is you, the bigger you. Some of you may call it your higher self. I don't use the term higher self because that feels like a self that's beyond, right? And that's not actually rooted in the body and accessible in the body and something that we can feel into now that's innervated with the body. And the deeper self is. There isn't something, well, the way I see it, this isn't something that's way up beyond, above and beyond and outside, but instead deep, deep within, deeper within and inside. And so for the month of February, which I often think of as a month of love, Valentine's Day is coming up. Whether you're in a relationship or not, it is a time to think about love. And Black History Month is here. It's also a time to think about love, especially as Black people, loving ourselves and healing through love. That is really the only way to truly heal from collective systemic trauma and abuse. The most radical thing you can do as a Black person is love yourself. And so I want this series to not just talk about your heart chakra and how to expand in love. And I've done those conversations in the past. I've done those classes in the past, right? Just, you know, um, flowery, lovey, and feels good. Here's some breath work for your heart chakra. But what it actually means, the harder parts, I wanted to dive into the harder parts of loving yourself and what it looks like to grow and deepen in our own self love. And these are often things we think about within relation, forgiving our partner, forgiving our loved ones, our friends, our family. Like forgiveness is something that's talked about a lot as something that we do to deepen our interrelational um our relationships. And we have to remember that forgiveness is also something we need to do for ourselves. It is often that thing, that piece, that's actually preventing us from showing up as our essence, showing up in our soul's essence, showing up integrated with our deeper self. And so we are only free when we love ourselves. We're only truly free when we love ourselves. And actually, the act of loving ourselves frees us. There's there's so many different traps. I'm calling them traps in society. And they're all fabricated on this hope, this hunch that you don't love yourself. And this is so important to understand because we're starting to get keen on, manipulation tactics in the media and narcissism, and we're starting to get keen collectively, I'd say, in the last 10 years on, well, you know, many of us has been woke to this, and I wasn't so keen on this. But I think it's grown. It's grown. We talk about it more now. We recognize um we recognize the patterns more easily now. We're talking about it more, which is good, which is good. And it's also important though to recognize what causes us to be vulnerable to manipulation, to predators in our society or those with malintent. And it really is this. It's not loving yourself fully. Because if you don't love yourself, you're going to be easier to puppet. So I saw a creator talk about this on Instagram, and I'll I'll look up the video and add it in the program. If you join the 30 meditation challenge, so wherever you're listening to the replay, I'll add a note. Because I like to give credit where credit is due. And it was like an older video. It's, like 2 months now because Wicked came out in December. And he was talking about how many people are kind of taken aback by Cynthia Erivo and not liking her response to certain questions. And I don't know that well, I don't know. I don't know Cynthia that well, and I don't know her body of work that well. I myself was like, what is this stuff with Ariana Grande? But that's like as an aside. I don't know what's going on there. I think there's with the personal and the professional, it's like I like them both professionally as I would like them as artists. Um, I wouldn't I wouldn't necessarily agree or like what they do in their personal lives, which is their business. And but this creator was talking about specifically responses that Cynthia had to um, questions that were ridiculous. I think on one podcast that he previewed, this interviewer was asking about her, I guess, her nails and what it's like for her to use the bathroom with those nails. And it's just like, oh, what the fuck? Like, huh? If I and I haven't seen Wicked yet, but he showed a clip and I didn't even realize that this was live singing and she's doing tremendous vocals flying around on this broom. And I'm like, my God, of all the things you could be asking this woman about, look at this amazing piece of artistry. And I'll kind of ruin the clip for you, but he's like, what people aren't getting the reason why this is so confounding, because she kind of just is like, she's very honest with her reaction to the question. She'll, still respond to the question, but she's very honest with her response. Like, what kind of question is that? Essentially, she says that in different ways in these interviews. What kind of question is that? Sorry, I had to cough. And in his takeaway is that what most people are witnessing is something that a lot of people don't have, and that is self-love. And the way that you carry yourself, the things that you entertain when you love yourself, the things that you put up with, they're different. And I have to agree. When I now look at those videos or even the way that I've seen her move in interviews, I now, through the lens of, oh, wait, this isn't someone who is insecure about something or is defending her right to be in that space. This is someone who loves herself, who is honored to be there, but also knows she is worthy of being there. Then I do see her interviews differently and I understand her. I understand her now, right? Um, and that is so interesting because I think we project uh that perhaps people are uncomfortable with themselves in ways that maybe we are still uncomfortable with ourselves. And so there's this thing again in society where it's if you don't love yourself, then ta-da, you've revealed these puppet strings. So she's not looking to be understood in every little way. Uh, she's just speaking honestly. There's an authenticity that comes forth that's not even feigned authenticity. It's just a realness. And there's boundaries. There are these natural boundaries within how she shows up. There are things that she shares and things that she doesn't. And it is it is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. I love her. I love her now. Well, I don't know her, right? I don't know her, but I love this understanding. And there's also something to be said as well. Um, because I kind of I have some through lines between her experience or what I imagine to be her experience and mine, which is that position that we're all in the public sphere or in our relationships, we're in a larger friend group or whatever, and there's other people involved where there is this potential for someone to create a narrative about you. And I think all figures and public figures face this challenge where there's this potential for the interviewer or the commentator or whoever to create a story about you that isn't necessarily reflective of you. Sorry, I had to cough again. If you hear the audio pause, it's usually because I'm coughing. Um, there's this potential for someone to put forward their own, whether it's projections or maybe they only know part of the story or whatever, and they now have this power, right? To say what they would like. And you see this a lot in narcissistic abuse. Triangulation is what it's called, or smearing someone's name, where the abuser notices that they can now speak to someone who has not been privy to the full experience and craft a narrative, right? And craft a story. And if you don't love yourself, which oftentimes when we're in these abuse situations, even if we went into these relationships loving ourselves or growing in love for ourselves, abusers tend to chip away at you. They start to look for your vulnerabilities. So that's you're most likely not loving yourself as much as maybe you were before, or you went into the relationship not necessarily feeling a lot of love for yourself. And so you're vulnerable, right? And so if you don't love yourself, then when someone else comes and say, "Oh, I heard such and such about you. I heard this story about you." What do we naturally as humans feel to do? We feel the need to rush in and correct the narrative. No, no, no. I'm not bad. I'm good. Right? We feel that pull to rush in and set the story straight, or even worse, we feel that we now need to perform and prove our goodness. So now we are in a position where we now have to perform. Could never make any mistakes because then it's gonna buy into that story. It's gonna play into that story that's been planted. And now you have a cage. You're like literally like a puppet on a stage, and it's like, oh, now I'm in the story. What do I do? What do I do? And as someone who has experienced this, the only way truly out is in radical self love. Because otherwise, we are stuck on that stage, stuck in that play, stuck in that movie, stuck in that story, and trying to free ourselves from a character that's not even being written by us. I mean, imagine being a TV character and becoming conscious, awake, and aware in a TV show where you don't have any control over the script. Hmm, think about that. And so we can, as a result, if we become aware of the script, we can choose to exit it. But the only way, really, to do so on an emotional level, because we're still human, we still have feelings, right? It still hurts. It still hurts to think people are thinking poorly of us. It still hurts. But the really only way to exit that story then is to accept, to accept. To accept that there are going to be people who misunderstand us, to accept that we have made mistakes. I feel like this is the most talking I've done since I've gotten sick, and it's like a lot of mucus coming up. So sorry for all the coughing. Well, I pause it. So sorry for the pauses. Um, so the only way to really become free is to have a level of love that is independent, not dependent of the story, of the script. And this is really, you're probably like, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? And this is really interesting when we then come to the deeper self practice. So, again, this talk. If you're listening to this, I think I'm going to gift this conversation. So, if you're listening to this outside of the challenge, within the challenge, you receive the deeper self guided meditation, and it's a meditation designed by me using my years of experience in coaching. Uh, I offer, I call it like a shortcut, a somatic shortcut to accessing your deeper self, which works for all levels. So even if you're a beginner meditator or an advanced meditator, it helps you to more easily access your deeper self and feel this very real, visceral beingness that is within you. You can purchase the guided meditation or the challenge if you want to get into the 30-day challenge at uniquebell.com/shop. But what you may realize once you start your deeper self practice is your deeper self is not focused where you're focused. Your deeper self is not doing this dance. Your deeper self doesn't have strings, there's no puppet strings. And so your deeper self is never defending or guarding itself against the outside world, even if you recognize someone is dangerous or improper or abusive or manipulative. Your deeper self is never on guard. Your deeper self is never trying to prove goodness. Your deeper self isn't focused where you're focused. And this really shocked me because so just for some background, I started my journey. Well, I've had experiences with the deeper self, and I didn't really have words for what it was. I had some profound spiritual awakening experiences, and then this is over the course of about 10 years. And I would say, geez, I'm not good at like keeping track of all the years, but I would say maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I had this, I call it light body experience. And that's when I really experienced my deeper self more fully and was like, whoa, I want to embody this and integrate this, wherever this is. I recognize it as me. It's not something outside of myself. It's not a goddess or an out external being, or it's this is me. Um, and so this, however, came shortly after I had realized how codependent I was, and I'd learned about codependency, or like I was doing a deep dive into codependency, and I had done extensive journaling. I read Codependent No More. I made this really big list of all the things that I recognized I was doing, and then I wanted to shift. I mean, it was like a long list, y'all. And so this was like major, like I I recognize I'm doing this. I see it now. I don't fully understand the source of it just yet. Or at the time I thought I did. Um Now I laugh because I'm like, oh my goodness. I had no idea. Um and so, I have this moment of okay, I'm gonna work on this, and I set the intentions. I start, really speaking my boundaries more. And then I have this deeper self experience. And I didn't even call it the deeper self at that time. I just called it me, capital M, capital E, because it didn't have a name, I didn't have a word for it. I just knew it was me. Um, this beingness. And so here I am trying to set boundaries and realizing, I because I'm codependent, I'm so like distraught about boundary setting. I'm such a people pleaser that I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do it. Those funny videos that you'll see often online of like when people pleasers say they're entering their villain era. And all they're saying is like, no, I don't want chocolate ice cream. I want vanilla ice cream or something, silly like that. That was me. It's just like the smallest thing. You feel like a drama queen because you're like, this is so painful. This is so painful for me to do. Um, Not anymore, but It was at the time. It felt like such a big step. And everything I now know that from a young age, I was deeply wired to do this, to be like this because of the environment I was in and what I grew up around. And I thought I was the abnormal one and everything around me was quote unquote normal, or I didn't realize I was in a very abnormal. And I mean, I didn't know it was abnormal. There was a lot of abuse and trauma, but I had so much empathy for that person. I didn't realize that there were other things at play. And so that's just to say, I was very hardwired to be like this. And so then when I tuned into my deeper self, however, and I had all this like inner conflict of boundaries and speaking up and like they're not loving because how can we be loving if we're pushing people away? How can we be loving if what we're doing is if these boundaries are going to cause like a divide, and how could that be love? Like shouldn't I be calling everyone in? And that was part of me. And then the growing, evolving part of me was like, no, I need to be, stern and secure. And then I had my deeper self, who I realized did not view this like this at all. Did not the energetic weight of boundaries was not the same. There was no heaviness around it. It just felt like, when you put, if you're in like sixth grade, I feel like this is sixth grade where I witnessed this, where we did this experiment of like oil and water. There's just this natural affinity that happens, and that's all it is. On this energetic level to your deeper self, there's just a natural affinity, and it's not done in malice, it's not done in anything because your deeper self loves you. It has a natural affinity towards those who love, who will love you, who will respect you, who will care for you. And so it easily pulls you towards that. And it doesn't need to like be harsh or sometimes it is if it feels it's needed. Like sometimes it offers up that to like get you away from something dangerous, but there isn't this quality of energy that's antagonistic or necessarily like I'm like looking for the word. Um, there isn't a pushing away. There isn't a pushing away. There's no pushing away. It's just a natural light affinity towards what is for you. And so I was shocked. I was shocked to find that my deeper self was not like in toils or didn't have this grand um spiritual wisdom to give about this. There wasn't this there wasn't this great parable or you know what I mean, like something super long and eloquent or like this and this about the world and da da da. There wasn't anything. It was just, mm, I love you. I adore you. Where is love? Let's go towards that. And that's all it was. And so your deeper self is free from the past, not because it doesn't care about the past or care about um, harm that was either done by you or done to you, but because it loves you. And this is a kind of love that pierces, not a kind of love. I believe all love pierces the regrets and resentments of the past and also the worries about the future. It actually brings us firmly into the present. Love demands presence. And a great example of this is art and beauty. When you fall in love with a piece of art or a person, you are completely present to them. Your senses are awake. There's just nothing but the now moment. I mean, you know that feeling. It's like you're hanging on each breath, each brushstroke, each form. It's like the most alive feeling. And so when you are in love, you're in presence, you're in the now with whatever that object of your love is. And so when your deeper self, when I say your deeper self is ever present, then what I'm really saying is your deeper self is ever loving you. The right now you, not the future you, not the potential within you, not the past you or the you before you did that thing or the you before you made that choice or the you that you need to get back to or the you that needs to get back on track. The present you. So, this is a long winded way to get back to self forgiveness. But self forgiveness is about returning to this level of presence with yourself. It means your mind is no longer being blocked from loving the present you. Because again, we are human. We have puppet strings, and when we don't love ourselves, we can enter that dance of trying to prove ourselves or punishing ourselves in the present for things we've done in the past, not allowing ourselves to feel joy. And so there's things that happen internally, things that we do when we don't love ourselves. We don't feel that we have that allowance to joy, even though we know, well, you may not know, but I'm going to tell you right now. Um, your deeper self is always, when you integrate with your deeper self, you enter the state of joy, of hopefulness, of love. You can feel the abundance in the air. You can feel the opportunity. It's this state of like percolating aliveness. And it's always like there for you to tune in. You just need to tune in. Um, but when we aren't loving ourselves, if we're not forgiving ourselves for holding a grudge or resentment towards ourselves, our mind then is not allowing ourselves to be present with the joy that could be experienced in the now. We aren't allowing ourselves to fully feel our own love, that love that flows abundantly and freely from your deeper self. And usually it's because we've deemed ourselves unworthy for some reason or this mistake. And I don't know who this talk is reaching. Maybe there is something that you've done that you need to make amends for. But once you've made those amends and once you've made the situation right, and you will know for yourself what that means to make that situation right, to take action to repair, and we can't, take back what we've done, but you've taken action. You've made commitments to repair, and you've actually done it. Not lip service, but you've actually done it. Once we do that work, then the next piece is to forgive ourselves, to not hold ourselves as broken or unworthy forevermore now. And that's why the deeper self practice is so impactful, because there is a part of you that, regardless of what you've done or mistakes you feel you've made, or chances that maybe you feel you've thrown away, and also regardless of what has been done to you, the traumas that you've experienced, your deeper self remains whole, intact, vibrant, right? And this is why I'm starting to appreciate the human experience. I feel like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I was in so much confusion. Like, why on earth, if there is a God, if there is a source, if there is a beingness, why would they create this trap? And at this time I was Christian, and it really just did not make sense to me. My mind could not make sense of it. Even though I believe that there was a higher power, there was something. I could feel the spiritual. I've always had a deep connection to spirituality, energy. I've always had that connection, and I just couldn't rationalize this idea of souls being created as some kind of test. But now, through what I've experienced and experiencing the deeper self, it's like, huh, I kind of get it. I kind of get it because, and I don't fully get it. I'm still still working on my own understanding here. Um, but I kind of get it. This part of you remains whole, intact. The essence of who you are, it's never affected. I shouldn't say it's never affected. It's never damaged by the human experience. It only expands as a result of the human experience. And there's just something so delightful about that. And it's always here with you. It's always, guiding you. And so you're never just kind of cast off. The ego mind is never just like cast off. It's actually just, it's always connected. And I share a little bit more about this in my free masterclass on co-creating with the deeper self, which you can access from the 30-day meditation challenge, or you can go ahead and get it at uniquebell.com/free masterclass. If you'd like to learn more about how the deeper self is integrated with the human self or the ego mind, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I kind of get it. And so, coming back to self forgiveness, how do we allow self forgiveness to take root? And how can our deeper self help in that? So, I'm gonna like state this. I kind of wrote this out as almost like a, um, what do you call it? Re like call and response. And so you might start by actually saying out loud, I forgive myself. And of course, well, not of course, but I believe your deeper self will likely respond with, there's nothing to forgive. At least that's what I feel when I connect to my deeper self. And so then we may ask, well, why do I still feel bad? And your deeper self might say, well, maybe forgiveness isn't what you're reaching for. Hmm, hmm. And you might say, then what am I reaching for? If I know I did the best I could with what I knew at the time, or maybe I didn't do the best I could, maybe I really made a mistake, but I recognize that now. I've learned from it, and I'm grateful for the lessons learned. I see the benefit of this experience, but so if I understand maybe why this happened or why it needed to happen, or just the fruits of the benefits of what I've gained from this experience. Hmm. Then what am I reaching for if I know I don't really like there's nothing really to forgive. I'm human. I'm living life, or I was struggling with these shortcomings, and it led to all of this. It led to this growth, right? So, like, technically, there's nothing really to forgive. Then what is it that I'm reaching for? And take a moment to feel into that. What are you reaching for? I would, I would dare to say that what you're really reaching for is permission. It's permission. Permission to be happy now. Permission to embrace life as it is now. Permission to be fully here and integrated with your deeper self, allowing your soul's essence to shine through you. And when we translate for self forgiveness as permission, permission to be, permission to exist, we can feel the way to self forgiveness. We can feel our way to the other side. Just as in relationships, we forgive in order to be present in those relationships, right? To not constantly harken back to past harm. There's this restoration that happens. The same is true for self forgiveness. As we forgive ourselves, what we're really doing is giving ourselves permission to restore our connection with our deeper self, to blend with our deeper self and find harmony with who we really are, to let ourselves be that shining ray of light, of joy, of curiosity. We're allowing ourselves to no longer be broken, but return to our whole, intact selves. We are setting ourselves free. I'm going to invite you, if you haven't already today, to complete your daily meditation and give yourself this permission. Notice that your deeper self is present with the current you, is loving the current you fully, radically, exceptionally. Thank you for joining the first part of the Loving Yourself Free series. Go ahead and get the daily meditation or start the challenge if you haven't already. And I'll actually see you tomorrow for part 2, which is, I have to pull up my calendar because I've forgotten. Part 2, drum rolls, which I will be talking about healing shame. Alrighty, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow.